Printer can print up to 10 lines per second. Welcome home, Columbia. Beautiful, beautiful. This printer can print up to 10 lines per second. This printer can print up to 10 lines per second.
Welcome to Lesson 4, Arrays. Arrays are very powerful in code. They allow us to collect a whole bunch of different values and put them into one variable. Okay, sounds odd, but let me show you how it works. So I've got a file open, arrays.html. Why don't you copy that down, and then I'll come back and we will start writing some more code and explaining arrays. Okay, so hopefully you've copied this down and you have two arrays. One is named names and the other one is nums. And of course, one has strings in it and the other one has numbers in it. Okay, so we have a collection of values that is stored in one variable in both cases. How do we access one of those values? A value is called an element in an array. The names array has 3 elements. The numbers array, or nums array, has 4 elements. Okay, so how do we access an element? Well, we do that with something called an index, and it looks like this. We're going to use console log names, square bracket, 1. So 1 is the number of the index, and let's see what that returns. So I'll save that, and let's reload that, and then open the console. So view developer JavaScript console, Sally. Okay, so let's look back and see what that is. So at number 1 index in the names array is Sally. Well, that's this one. That looks like the second item in the names array. Okay, so what's going on? Well, indexes start at 0 in an array. So Jim is at index 0, Sally is at index 1, and Sam is at index 2. Okay, so when I say names 1, 1 is the index, and that gives us Sally. So if I said names 0, save that, and reload this, it gives us Jim. Okay? So that's how we access an item in an array. Let's go ahead and do the nums, just to show you that it works exactly the same. So 45 is at index 0, 77 is index 1, 5 is index 2, 6 is index 3. Let's see what nums index 3 is. 6. And there it is. 0, 1, 2, 3. Nums 3 is 6. Okay, so that's cool. So how do we output all the items in an array? Well, that's where a for loop comes in. So we do something like this. For let I start at 0, because arrays start at 0. Array indexes start at 0. Let I start at 0. I less than names dot length. I increment. Console log names I. you'll see arrays being accessed this way all the time. So what does this say? Well, it says start I at 0 and go to the length of the names array. That's what names length is. And what is that? In this case, it's 3. So this is saying test is I less than 3? If so, console log and then increment. So why less than names length? Well, the length is 3, but remember we're only going to index 2 because we start at 0, 1, 2. So as long as I is less than the length, we're going to console log. I know that sounds a little confusing because we're starting at 0, but you'll get used to it. So I'll save that and reload, and you can see it gives us all 3 elements in the array. Okay, so let me show you how we can, I'll just show you how that will work on the nums array as well, but we need to change this up here. Nums. Save that, reload, and there are all the numbers, 4 numbers. We can make arrays as long as we want, within reason. I don't know exactly, there's a limitation, but it's a huge number, huge number. So that's how we access everything in an array. The other thing to note about arrays is we can put different types of values in an array. For instance, let's call this first array my array. And then we have 3 names in it. Let's change this first name to a number, 45. Let's change this Sam to a decimal point number, 78.9. So we can have integers, we can have decimal point numbers, and we can have strings in the same array. So let's output that. Let's change this to my array length and my array I. Save that. And same thing, it outputs the same. You notice Jim is in black, that's a string, and the other 2 are numbers, those are in blue. Okay. So one other thing, we can have, I'm going to get rid of all this stuff. We can have what's called a 2D array, and that is basically an array that is made up of more arrays. So that might look something like this. Let 2D equal, square bracket. And so we have an array that has nothing in it yet, but I'm going to put an array in it. And let's put a couple numbers in here, comma after that array. And let's put another array in here. Let's do some text. Let's put a comma after that array. And let's do another array. Let's put some decimal point numbers. Okay, I don't have to put a comma after the last array. Okay, so there's an array called 2D that is made up of three arrays. And each one of those arrays has its own elements. Okay, so how would, if I did, let's console log 2D. And if I did, I'm just going to throw 1 in there. What do you think that will return? So I'm grabbing index number 1 of the 2D array. What do you think that will return? Save that. Load it. Well, ignore this number here too for a second. It returned Jim and Tim. Let's go back and look at the code. So 2D1 returned Jim and Tim. So that makes sense. 2D0 is this whole array here. 2D index 1 is this whole array here. 2D index 2 would be this whole array there. Okay? Now this 2 it represents how many items are in that array. And then if we open this up, this is saying in this array that we returned, at index 0 is Jim, and at index 1 is Tim. Okay. So let's say I wanted to grab this number right here, 78.1. How would I do that? Well, let's see. I've got to grab this array first. So that would be index 0, 1, 2. And I want to grab this number here, which is at index 0, 1. Okay, so I need two index numbers to grab that. Okay, so that would be 2D, index 2, index 1. Save that. And remember, we're trying to grab 78.1. And there it is. Okay, so stare at that for a while until that makes sense to you. Also, if you want to learn more about arrays, and we'll be doing this later in more complex code, but if you want to explore it now, then do a Google search on JavaScript array methods. This, remember the length? Remember we got the array length? That's a method. Length is a method, an array method. And there are all kinds of different methods for arrays. What are methods? Methods are different ways to operate on an array and do different things to an array. So it's a little advanced for where you are now, but if you feel like exploring that, go ahead. So that is arrays, lesson 4. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in lesson 5.